truth.
Hello, and welcome to Word of Truth Podcast. Our mission is to shine the light of biblical truth on the questions of life. Hosted by Stephen Brown and Stone Anderson. Enjoy the show.
Sanctify them through thy truth. Thy word is true. Yeah. Sanctify them through thy truth. Thy word is true. Yeah. Word of truth.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to the very first episode of Word versus World. I'm your co-host, Stone Anderson, and today I'm here with Stephen Brown.
What's up?
Today we're talking about a very controversial subject, aliens. So, to start, what are aliens? Well, aliens, extraterrestrial life is just a hypothetical life that should be or could be out there somewhere. So, Stephen, start us off. What do you think of the alien subject?
Well, I had to adjust my camera there. Why is it controversial? If we ask that question, maybe that'll start us off. Why is it controversial, Stone? You said it's a very controversial subject. Why do you say that?
Because so many people say, I have no idea. Some people are dead set, there is aliens, and then there's other people who's, no, there's not.
Yeah, I guess the alien question kind of strikes at people's worldview in a way, doesn't it? Like if you're a believer, you're a passionate believer, and if you're if you're not a believer in aliens, so-called, like if you actually take a position on it, you're pretty passionate about it. And then in the middle, you have all these, well, I don't know, people, could be, couldn't be, not interested enough to care. Okay, so for those that believe, well, you defined aliens for us, right?
Yeah, it's just extraterrestrial life out there somewhere that could or maybe is, maybe ain't. It's not really known.
Would you say extraterrestrial in a non-biblical sense, right? Because there are extraterrestrials, so to speak.
Yeah, I don't mean angels or anything spiritual. I mean another race of
Alien grays,
humanoid type
green,
creatures, yes.
Yeah. Man-eating insect giant things or whatever. Yeah. Okay, so we're talking about the real ET, right? The something from another planet, this physical being, not in the spiritual realm, not biblical or whatever.
Yes.
Give me, okay, so the world, the believers in that, they really are attached to it. Why do you think that's the case?
I would say a lot of these people, they want to believe in it, and I would say a whole lot of it is, in a way, I mean, whenever I was younger, I got caught up in it a lot. I watched like every season, every episode of Unsealed Alien Files. And there's something kind of fun about it. It's like, it's creepy, but it's kind of fun. It's like there could be something out there, and you could look up one night and see a spaceship, and it just kind of excites you.
Does it excite you because the world is more mysterious than you thought, and there's a lot of mystery and intrigue and unknown in the vast?
Yes, and also it's with aliens, it's something that's not actually from this world, but there's so many encounters with them that you have enough evidence to kind of go on.
Yeah, I think it's funny how many times you're having to do the air quotes. Yeah, it is interesting. The whole subject is definitely interesting. It's interesting to me that part of what draws so many into the researching whether or not there's truth in aliens is that what you're talking about. That sort of, it's like an unwritten book of human history. There's in our minds when we go down this rabbit hole. There's sort of this endless world of possibility. And it also opens up definitely something in me that sort of inner conspiracy nut, right? Mm-hmm. Of there's government cover-ups
Area
going
51
on here.
kind of thing.
Yeah. Alien base on the dark side of the moon. You know, all of the kind of things that have been imagined up by man. It definitely, at a time in my life, from when I was probably 22 or 23 years old until I was probably 27, 28, so about a 5-year time in my life, it definitely consumed a huge part of my life. That was, I think, have you ever seen the show Ancient Aliens?
I've seen a little bit of it.
Yeah, that was when Ancient Aliens was huge. It was a History Channel production, and I mean, I was into it, so much so that I wanted to buy every season so that I could have it, because I'm thinking, man, somebody needs to put this in the vault, and keep this safe and sacred, because this is, at that time to me, so mind-blowing. And really, I'll say this and then we'll get into it, but this is a Bible-centered podcast, and we, Stone and I both, are Bible-centered people as much as we can be. And truly, whatever the conclusion is, which we'll try and reach by the end of this show, what is the biblical conclusion? What's the verdict on aliens? Regardless of that, I want you to know that it's actually more interesting, the true history of man, and it's not hidden from man. If it's hidden from you, it's hidden from you by the devil himself, or by Satan, whom the Bible says has blinded the minds of those that believe not, lest they should see the light of the glorious gospel and believe and be saved. The true history of man, I've said this so many times, to me, there is no more amazing concept, no more amazing teaching, no more amazing idea that can ever sink into your mind than this. The same God that spoke the universe into existence created you. Created you for a purpose. Created you with a plan.
And then died on a cross to save you.
And then died to save you from a fallen condition that you need to wake up and realize that you're in. But nevertheless, that's not what this episode is about. I'm just saying, don't let this idea that, if they don't buy into aliens or whatever, then my world is not as exciting as it once was. Because I'm telling you, the biblical truth of mankind and angels and heaven and earth and hell and all of that kind of stuff is way more exciting when you really begin to believe it and grab a hold of it and dive into it than anything else that you've ever heard, because there is no eternal heaven for you in the worldview of ancient aliens. And this idea that you're going to be cryogenically frozen and resurrected 1,000 years from now, that's not going to happen either. But the biblical worldview is way more exciting. I do think it's interesting. You pointed it out. Okay, let's get into some of the evidence that's offered by the world, because this show is about the world versus the word, or word versus world. What is the evidence offered by the world to persuade men to believe in aliens?
I would say the biggest point, or the biggest piece of evidence they bring, would probably be all the encounters, all the stories passed down, every alien type encounter.
Give us an example of what you mean by an encounter. Are you talking about like encounters, artifacts? You're basically...
I'm talking about like somebody that sees a spaceship, or maybe the stories of people laying in their bed and the alien walks in.
Right. Before we go there, because that's like, we're going to have to spend some time on that one. You mentioned the other day, because we were talking about this in some show prep type stuff, hieroglyphs and paintings and stuff. Do you have any sort of...
Yes, and was it Nazca lines, stuff like that, yeah. And even some people even say the pyramids are evidence of aliens, because man couldn't have built that kind of stuff back then. They had to have a more intelligent type of builder, architect, or whatever.
The pyramids certainly are interesting. However, I think it's like, could modern man build that? Honestly, we could. you hear that we can't, but honestly we could. It's just, it would literally be just an unimaginable expense and an investment and a time that it's not worth it to any human being on earth to spend the $5 billion or whatever it would take to reproduce that. Now, we couldn't build it though without, well, I say we couldn't. It would be very unlikely that we could build it without the modern machines that we have. So we do have these cranes that'll lift, I don't know, tens of thousands of pounds. And we got cranes that literally will build skyscrapers right under the crane itself as the crane climbs its building and climbing and building. And we're building structures now out of brick and steel that are 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 feet tall that really are comparable in a sense to the Great Pyramids. But this idea that we couldn't build it is not, we can. We can't build it perhaps with the same technology and the same tools that they had, but this thinking I want to point out for a minute. Well, we could say the same. They couldn't build it with the technology that we have either. You could take some of them guys and give them a cell phone and they could study on it for months and not know what in the world's going on with it or how to use it. So in some sense, they were extremely, extremely intelligent. I don't want to take that away. They were, I believe, in the natural realm, more wise at the very least, and every bit as intelligent as we are. But this idea that we have to jump to conclusions is what I'm getting at, that aliens made it. That just is illogical. To just find something that you can't explain within your worldview and invoke aliens. But you're right, the pyramids themselves, and then also, I think you mentioned some paintings.
Yeah, the hieroglyphs you see of maybe a little spaceship hovering over some men, or a lot of people go to King Tut with the elongated head, and they say he's alien, half human. And so there's a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that, when we talked about doing our first episode of Word Verse World, we discussed what topic we may begin with, and you picked aliens. And that's a really good choice because it spider webs out into so many other strands of what builds a solid worldview. This idea of angels and demons, and like you just said, we're not just talking about the possibility of aliens. We're talking about, or they are talking about, aliens interbreeding with humans, right? Hybrid type creatures. And truly it gets into some just absolutely fascinating possibilities if you buy into like I once did. I was a proponent of ancient aliens like you wouldn't believe. I wanted to go to these places and see them for myself and take my speed square and my calipers and do all of my own measurements and all of that kind of stuff. I was really into it. It's very captivating. However, briefly, and then we'll unpack it, Stone, what do you think the Bible's position on alien gray type ET life is, and why defend it?
I have never seen once in the Bible a mention of, besides angels and demons, anything spiritual. There's not a mention of an alien type humanoid creature. It's the whole book is basically God's plan for man. There's not a lot. You don't really talk about outer space that much.
So what's the Bible's position?
I would say the Bible does not support aliens.
So in your understanding, the Bible does not support the idea that there is a human level equivalent intelligent being out there on another planet somewhere.
Nope, I do not believe so.
Right. And you said something the other day that I think is super important, and this ties us back into our other podcast episode of Weekly Word, but you said biblically man in the earth is the center of the universe.
Yes.
Kind of explain how do you mean that? Do you mean it's the center as in it occupies the center of space, or do you mean it's as far as God is concerned, mankind?
As far as God is concerned, man is the center point of everything. That's kind of how he created man for a purpose. and he sent his son to die, and he had it recorded, and he has given us the word of God. It's like this is where his focus is. This is where he's working, I guess you could say.
Yeah, Jesus Christ came to earth, not another planet. And I can say that very authoritatively based on the Word of God. You may say, well, what if he was born here and then was also manifested in the flesh on another planet? But that's not the case, because that's not who Jesus Christ is. And when Jesus Christ took upon himself the nature of man, he took it to the fullest extent. He became 100% man. And God has never taken upon himself any other thing than 100% man. So if it were even possible, according to the Bible, that there were some other type of intelligent life form out there, it's human life. It's not, insect man-eating life. It's not alien gray life. It's not little green men life. It's humans. If God made an intelligent life form on another planet, he made humans. We have to get this in our mind. It's important. It's not arrogant. I have heard people say this is an arrogance, especially Stephen Hawking once said that we could choose to believe we're the center of the universe, yada, yada, yada. He said, but I would rather take the more humble position that we're an insignificant nothing on an insignificant arm of an insignificant galaxy and an insignificant cluster of galaxies in an insignificant area of space. Do you think that's humility, Stone?
No, he's making himself to be his own God. He knows what he's talking about, and he's not going to listen to nothing else.
He's rejecting the truth of what God has said. It's not me that says that mankind is the pinnacle of the creation of God. It's not me that says that man is the apple of God's eye, and really specifically the believing man, the man of faith, the church man, so to speak. It's not me that's saying that. It's not me that said that on day 4, not day 1, but on day 4, God made the sun and the moon, or the greater light and the lesser light, as it's worded in the Authorized Version. It's not me that said that. It's the Word of God that started with earth. Now, am I making an argument for geocentricity tonight? No, I'm not. The point is what Stone said, that in the biblical worldview, which is the true worldview, right? It is the truth. Mankind is the centerpiece in salvation and the Son of God coming to save man. That's the whole story of man. That's the whole story of earth. And this concept that there's other life out there, really, if it's not, there are some, we talked about this before, some very mysterious, mystical creatures talked about in the Bible. There's, angels with 6 wings, angels with 4 wings, 4-headed beasts talked about in the book of Revelation. Now, we don't know, are all of these just literal, that's how they look, or is there some symbolism, some spiritualization there? We don't know. It doesn't really matter. It's talking about spiritual life forms, and when people talk about ETs, that's not what they're talking about. Well, what about evolution, though, Stone? Because we could say, well, the Bible doesn't allow it when it comes to salvation, when it comes to creation, but there's this evolutionary idea built into it, isn't there?
Well, if I was an evolutionist, I would be kind of arrogant to think I was that humans and everything on Earth was the only thing that's ever evolved. I mean, there's trillions and trillions of stars and planets and galaxies. Why just us?
Yeah, if evolution was true, then you would be arrogant, right? That's,
yes.
If evolution is true, then Stephen Hawking is also correct. But this was, you said something to me the other day that you formerly believed in aliens. Now, we haven't got to, before you say anything, the show's going to go on, and there's a lot more things that we want to unpack and talk about it, so don't turn it off just because we're saying we don't currently buy into the alien thing, because there is a twist in the plot here as we're going to go through. We're not saying that every single thing that's ever been said about aliens is false. That's not what we're saying, but we do want to put a different worldview on it. However, you said at one time, Stone, that you used to believe in aliens.
Yeah, I did used to whenever I was... Probably up until a couple of years ago. But I was persuaded otherwise.
Well, what persuaded you otherwise? What changed? Give me some history here. Tell me the story. Take me down that road.
Okay, well, it probably started when I first started watching that Unsealed Alien Files, and I kind of got a little excited. I was like, oh, I've never thought of that before, and that this is a famous story that happened, so I'm going to... Everybody else says it's true. It probably is. And so I just watched all the seasons and just a believer in him, and not a lot of people... A bunch of my friends was like, no, it's not real. And so it kind of gave me kind of took the opposite side just for the fun of it. But then I was listening to some creationists talk, and they said, if there are aliens out there, did God create them? When man sinned and everything fell from perfection, did they, out there in a different galaxy or on a different planet somewhere, did they also suffer because of man's sin? Because that doesn't really seem just. And then if they are humanoid type people, I'm assuming they would have souls. So would Jesus have to go also to their planet and to this planet and just start dying all over the place there's so many, and there's, like I said, there's not even a mention of humanoid type people, aliens in the Bible that I've seen.
Yeah, but what's interesting to me, I went down a very similar road years and years ago. Like I said, I loved passionately. I did not miss an episode of Ancient Aliens, and most of them I watched 2 and 3 and 4 times. In fact, when touchscreen phones first came out, I had probably an illegal app where I could download and save videos from YouTube, and I saved every Ancient Aliens I could save on my phone, thinking I'm preserving this, most important information in the world. So, I was into it, man. But I was in the ignorance of unbelief, and I don't mean that harsh, but that is the case. I didn't know it. I made arguments like this. If there's trillions of planets, well, more than that, trillions of stars, trillions of galaxies, and untold trillions of planets, as they say, if that's true, then we would be arrogant. That was the position I took. Not really, it wasn't to me about arrogance. It was more like we would be illogical to think we're the only life in this grand stage of the universe. That would just be silly to believe such a thing, with so many chances and so many places and so many planets. And I even used to say, well, we don't have to find Earth-like planets, because the Christians would say to me, well, there's no other Earth-like planets out there. And I would say, I don't care, because I'm not looking for Earth-like life. I'm looking for alien life. And we may find an alien race of whatever that evolved to breathe something other than oxygen and all this. It's foolish to think with so much space and planets and matter out there that there's not alien life. And then I started flirting with Christianity, so to speak, and started flirting with believing. But even then, I said, well, who am I to say that God didn't make, people or whatever and put them on the planets out there all over the place? Who am I to limit God? I said that. I remember specifically saying one time, I agree with the Pope that God didn't reveal to us everything. And there's this, it seems like the universe just sort of beckons you to believe that there's other things out there other than you. I bought into all of it. I defended it passionately. And the area of reasoning that you talked about a second ago was what really began to wake me up to something. And that was the truth of Jesus Christ. And beginning to think about what is the gospel to aliens. And there's not one. And then what you said also, that the Bible teaches us that when man fell, the whole creation fell under the curse with him. And the Bible says that the whole creation groans and pains and travails together, waiting to be delivered, basically. And that the whole creation was subject to vanity. And so many things that we see from this. And also the creation week, which we talked about in our last podcast a little bit. And then this was the nail breaker for me. Nail breaker. That's not, no, I don't know. Whatever. Nail in the coffin, right? A nail breaker. I don't know where I come with that. The nail in the coffin for me was I realized something. And that is this. If evolution is not true, then aliens are not out there. End of story. If evolution doesn't happen, and by evolution, I'm talking about what we would say non-living things becoming living things, because I don't want to get bogged down here, and there's adaptation that happens. There's variation within any given genus or family of creatures. But if non-living things can never spontaneously become living things, if evolution in that sense doesn't happen, Stone, then there are no aliens out there. Unless God made them. That's the only possibility. Either God made them or they ain't there. So the question is evolution possible?
I mean, that's what I was sitting here thinking about, is how ridiculous evolution actually is. I mean, using the evolutionist theories, that tablet on the table should be able to, in 10 million years,
yeah, why not? I mean,
turn into an alien itself. I mean,
yeah.
And that's just ridiculous to even think about.
Yeah, and so our whole concept of, well, because there's trillions of possibilities, surely it would have happened at least 100 times. That's not the case, because that's like saying, well, 2 + 2 = 4 here, but it's possible that on some other planet 2 + 2 could equal 5. And someone might say, no, it's not possible. And I could say, well, sure it is. I mean, if you give it trillions of chances, trillions upon trillions, hundreds of trillions of chances, surely somewhere, someplace, 2 + 2 is going to equal 5.
But yeah, that's not the way it works.
It's just not how it works. It doesn't, the numbers themselves are obeying an underlying principle of existence. It's not about, they may draw the symbol different. They may write the word different, but the quantity, it will always be 2 + 2 = 4. That's always what it's going to be. And this idea that evolution, people will say, well, given us billions of years and trillions of planets, and that's probably enough that it could have happened somewhere, but it isn't. I don't care how much time you call upon.
Life can only come from life.
Yes. Give them infinity. 15 billion years, I don't care. Give them hundreds of billions of years. Give them infinity times 2, which is not even possible. It doesn't matter. A non-living thing will never spontaneously become a living thing. It's called the law of biogenesis or abiogenesis. Some people word it differently. Life can only come from life. That's just the way that it is, and you're never going to break that. It's not that, that's a law now, but it wasn't a law in the past, that things could just spontaneously become alive. That's not the case. And so you agree with me. It's not that evolution is a slim chance.
It's impossible.
It's a 0 chance.
I mean, even like the second law of thermodynamics, which is the law that things are always decaying, eroding. They're always going from better to worse. Always.
Yes.
Humans age and die. A house eventually falls apart. Even mountains, I guess, erode down?
Yes, yeah.
So you look around, no matter what you look at, everything is decaying. When do you see something improving?
Yeah.
It can't. The only way it can be improved is if an intelligent life form improves it. And then, as soon as it's improved, it starts to decay again.
Exactly.
So that goes totally against evolution, where things are constantly always getting better.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many things that really, we could just unpack evolution for days here. Believe me, I know that they have put together a sort of persuasive, or they try and make it persuasive. They have put together this slideshow, this video, this pictures, this tree of life, all of this kind of stuff. And they hit us from the time we were 2 years old, when we first started learning to talk and watch TV or whatever. And they hit us with the music and the magazines and even the coloring books that we colored in when we were children. We were coloring evolutionary worldview images. And so it's so deeply imprinted that before you even know it, you believe it. You can even become a Christian and you can say, I believe God made everything. And then somebody can ask you something to do with evolution or whatever, and you'll take the evolution side and not even realize that you've done it. And so it creeps in on us. But the truth is, I have heard many Christians say, oh, evolution, there's not enough time for evolution. There's not enough planets for evolution. That's the wrong way to say it. There's not enough of anything for evolution because it's a zero probability.
Impossible.
It's absolutely
you had
impossible.
to get it in your head that it's never happened and it never will.
Exactly. Now, what we do see, on the other hand, since we're on this, is what a creationist would call the orchard of life. We don't see a tree of life where a single little microscopic dot became, unicellular and then multicellular, whatever, prokaryote, all that stuff, and then eventually from monkey to man type thing. We don't see that, but what we do see is an orchard of life where there are many different trees, and each one of those trees represents the branches of the primate kind and the branches of the canine kind and the branches of the feline kind. So we see many trees of life, so to speak. Now, that is actually something that we do see. That's something that makes sense with the world around us. However, we're getting off topic. Okay, so if evolution is a zero possibility, then would you agree that the only kind of alien, non-terrestrial life out there is spiritual?
Yes. Very much.
So that brings us back to square one, something that you talked about. And elaborate on that a little bit about this UFO alien encounter, abduction, phenomena stuff.
Well, you can just Google alien sightings. It is everywhere. Like, you've heard the stories where hundreds of people in one night in California saw something flying around in the sky, which it's a UFO, but that could be people in military vehicles for all we know, aircraft. You got stories like, I know a couple people in my family. One of my grandmother said she was chased by a UFO.
Chased her, huh? What did she have that they wanted? Her, I guess. Well, anyway, go ahead. That's interesting.
And then another one of my family members, they like 20, 30 years ago, back before like the technology boom with drones and all that, seen something hovering out over a field one time. And I guess that would be a little spooky. But even then, we don't know what it was. It's just just tons and tons of stories like that.
Yeah, I have come to realize, like I said the other day, everybody's got an Uncle Joe with a spaceship story. Everybody has that. Mm-hmm. And so the abundance of the evidence makes you think, well, maybe there's some truth to that. But however, the key word I just said is evidence. This is someone's testimony of what they think they saw. Is that evidence? Well, here's something that's interesting to me. Have you ever gone out, especially young, into the woods and you could just swear something was following you?
Yeah, probably more than once.
Yeah. And you just get so convinced of it that, have you ever started walking faster?
And then next thing you know, you're getting out of the woods.
Yeah. And then you're running. And by the time you get to the front door, you're about to beat that door down because you are just so persuaded that something is after you. The imagination. And even as a grown man, okay, I went camping with you and your brother, and I can't remember who all went.
Another guy from the church.
Yeah, some guys from the church. We went like 2 years ago. We went kayaking up the river and camping on the riverbank and all this, and there's a lot of natural wildlife in that area. And of course, I'm getting old. And so you guys
went not kayaking.
Yeah, y'all went kayaking at like midnight. Paddling up, Snake River or whatever at midnight. And I'm sitting there by the fire, no lights on. And I'm like 37 years old at that time. And I'm telling you, I started getting spooked out, man. And now, I didn't react like a kid and get up and go crazy with it or nothing and start calling y'all back, stop, come back. It wasn't like that. But I had to gain my composure. I had to sit here and be like, look, there's nothing out here that's out to get you, you know. Just yeah, I know you're hearing all these noises in the woods, but I had to calm down. Well, I don't mean to pick on your grandmother, and I don't want to hurt your feelings either, but your grandmother's story sounds something like that to me. She's seen something that caught her off guard, perhaps in the middle of the night. And from that day on, she's been convinced that there was something after her, and she was kind of on the run from it or whatever.
And she was with another person too, and it took the other person wouldn't talk about it for a long time. So they probably seen something, but they could have just seen like a reflection off of, I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of why I went that direction first, is to just show that the human mind can truly play tricks on you, that you can really think that you're seeing a whole lot of stuff and literally manifests, you know, faster heart rate and all this kind of stuff.
It's like kind of like when you walk into a house and you're alone and you get just a little bit jumpy, you hear a little crack and you're like, what was that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and even being a grown man, you know, dogs barking at 2 o'clock in the morning wakes me up. My wife's wanting me to go check on it, and it's cold and windy and dark outside, and I'm walking out there. Before I even go out the door, I'm already kind of like bowing up in case there is something out there. I'm getting ready that I'm going to take this bear on or whatever, and there's not even any bears around here. Point being, a lot of the UFO cases out there are, you know, I don't want to say imagined,
almost
but
misunderstood.
Yes, misunderstood.
And I would bet I could walk like some of the bigger cities where like the mass sightings have occurred. You could probably walk in and say, "Did y'all see that last night?" and make it up, and 100 people would be like, "Yeah, we saw that too."
Well, I think there's a good real world case study of what you just said. I don't remember what the year was. It was when basically radio was the main form of media for people before television became so popular and so, I guess, available. They broadcast a audio episode of War of the Worlds. You ever heard of that movie, that book, War of the Worlds?
It sounds familiar, but I'm probably too young.
I can't even think of the guy who wrote it. It's, you know, shame on me. Everybody out there in podcast land is ashamed of me right now. When they broadcast this, they did not announce ahead of time that they were going to broadcast a fictional book. Okay? And so the guy comes on the radio with the way that the book begins. They play sirens in the background, you know, and he's like, calling all military soldiers back to the base. There's a spaceship, you know, going on and on and on. And it caused, this was out in California, I believe, it caused such an uproar that literally people were outside shooting guns into the air, believing that they were under alien attack. Because this is back where people were not used to being exposed to media like this. Most people did not have a television. I don't even know if television was around at this time. And the guy come on and did such a fantastic job narrating this sort of story and this scenario that literally, you can look this up on Google. Cops were getting called out everywhere, and people believed they were seeing this. And yet it was completely 100% based on a fictional book, but they were sort of feeding off of each other's energy. They go out and see, oh, Bob's out there. He's at the end of his driveway too. He's checking to see what's going on. The people's coming out in the streets everywhere. You know, oh, this is real. And, you know. Well, I think a part of that has happened with the alien phenomenon, or the UFO specifically.
Especially now that we live in like an alien culture where Hollywood is like filled with extraterrestrial type stuff and video games and basically, the big Storm Area 51 type deal. It kind of excites people, and they're like, they just jump on it.
Yeah, that's kind of why I went there. It's a fact that until television became big, UFOs weren't big either. And you can definitely, everyone who's ever studied, a UFO or ufologist or however you'd like to say it, everyone who's ever really went down that in a serious scientific methodological type way, the cases of UFOs are thousands of percent higher than they were the day before the Wright brothers took flight for the first time. And so you've got to be logical in some way about this and see that there's a direct parallel between man taking flight and man seeing flying objects. People seeing things, not knowing what it is, maybe government type, and that gets into the whole conspiratorial type thing, test aircraft or whatever. There's an obvious parallel between man taking flight and man reporting seeing unidentified flying objects. However, before we bring this to a complete close, what about where they say, no, I didn't see the spacecraft, I didn't see that, I seen the alien itself in my bedroom?
I was just sitting here thinking about that. I would say still a whole lot of that is fictional. It's someone almost trying to make people look up to them or just having fun or whatever. But some of the encounters that, if you weeded out all the ones that ain't real, are not real, and you took the encounters, the 1% or whatever that seems to be most likely to be a true story, a lot of times they seem to be hand in hand with demon encounters. They seem to, by that I mean they are very similar to what a demon encounter someone talks about, and an alien encounter, they basically are the same thing. They wake up frozen in fear. It's just, I can't remember what else, but it's been a while, but they seem to just sound a lot alike. So maybe it ain't actually aliens, it's a demon.
Yeah, that is an interesting possibility, because I don't know, and I'm not going to pretend to know exactly what demons are. I just know that the Bible does teach that they're there and that they can interact with people, and that they can, it seems, sort of, I don't want to say manifest themselves into our world like visibly, but they can affect the materials. They can affect the physical, even though they're spiritual beings, they can affect the physical nature of human beings, because in the Bible, people that were possessed were thrown down by this demon at times, and even had what seems to be superhuman strength, like chain-breaking strength. And so this spirit of this demon, whatever this demon is it fallen angels? Is it the souls of dead men? I don't think that it's the souls of dead men. I don't really think the Bible allows for that. But really, what is it exactly? I don't know. What you're saying, I think there's an interesting thing there. I think we have to be careful how far we go with it. But there is a connection between demonic possession and the occult world and the alien thing, and people who are really open to believing in and following after and sort of pouring themselves into the Ouija board type stuff and all of this sort of occultish type hidden, mystery knowledge, mysteries, this, that, and the other, seances, candles, and a lot of the kind of people that are really drawn in to the whole alien crowd thing, the people that go out every year to the Burning Man festival out in New Mexico or wherever that is, those type of people seem to have sort of, they have the experiences more than anyone else, and I don't think that it's just because these extraterrestrials, they only like New Age hippie people.
It's because they've opened themselves up to things they should not have.
Because I believe the people have opened their mind, which is what Satan wants you to do. Open your mind to let him in. It's not open your mind to let new truth in. It's open your mind to let the lies in and to let sort of a demonic influence come into your life. And so that's what I was saying at the beginning. There's a whole lot more that could be said about it, but we don't have the time for this show. It's not that we're just totally dismissing every single report that's ever happened. That's not the case. I think a lot are, like we've said, possibly they are some unidentified flying objects. They're just man-made objects. And, one other thing, too, is it's always been a mystery to me, or very interesting, how there's this concept that this alien race has mined iron ore and made a spaceship and a hyperdrive of some sort and jumped through a wormhole and traveled, a billion light years and got here and crashed in the desert of New Mexico, that's like... That's one of the hardest things for me to believe is all of the supposed crashes, because it's not just the Roswell incident. That's a famous one, but there's so many crashes and landings and all this kind of stuff. And it's interesting too. You know, ET's always getting off the spaceship and going to the old lady out there working in her garden and asking her to represent the world or whatever and come, speak for him. If the aliens were real, why don't they just land on the White House lawn and go talk to the President of the United States or whatever? Well, there's so much that could be said about it that we'll probably just bring it to a close. Is there anything else you want to say?
We've not even covered how the government has came out and released UFO documents.
I haven't. Tell me about it. I haven't. I don't think I've.
I actually just saw it a second ago on the internet. I think this happened probably last year.
Do you know? Do you remember any specifics?
No, I think they were just basically saying there is unidentified objects that even we don't know what they are. But then again, that could be just...
Yeah, well, that's part of the problem. Let's talk about that real fast. How long do we have before this thing runs out? What's that say?
45 minutes.
45 minutes. Okay, give me 10 more minutes, if you will. What kind of evidence would it take to make you believe little green men were coming to planet Earth?
Probably if I woke up and there was one standing at the foot of my bed.
Why does it have to be that?
Anything less than actually seeing one in person is just sketchy.
Well, if you haven't seen it for yourself, then you're having to put your faith in someone else's experience, right? And even though thousands of people think they have seen it, that's not enough to make you believe. Right? I mean, even your family has claimed, which they didn't claim to see little green men, I suppose, but they claim to see spaceships, right?
Yes, sir.
And you still don't believe it?
Yeah, I don't believe aliens exist, no.
Yeah. Well, I don't either, and I think that the reason I even wanted to take time and bring this up is this is honestly the approach that everyone should have. And you may think, well, that's unfair. That's asking too much. That for me to believe it, I'm going to have to see a little green man or whatever, or a gray. Or I don't mean to belittle the whole conversation, but some type of intelligent life form, you're going to have to see it for yourself. That ought to be the case because we have already seen from this evolutionary worldview that once a person gets a sort of mindset that something is real, this evolutionist, atheist, Darwinist type person, he will walk out there and see a turtle shell and say, right then, that's a 200 million year old turtle that died a few thousand years ago and fossilized or whatever. And that's exactly what he's going to see. I said this before, to the evolutionist, the very ground he's walking on is proof that evolution happened and is real. That's how real it is in his mind. Everything he sees, the biology, the geology, the archaeology, all of it confirms his worldview to him because he has this sort of bias. Well, people that believe in this alien thing too, they're looking for confirmation for it all the time is all I'm saying. They want it to be true.
And so they'll see something and they want it to be true, so they'll twist it just enough to where now it fits.
Yes, and they don't want it to not be true, which is the same thing as saying they want it to be true, except it just shows this unintentional motivation to change the evidence. Like I think about that chimpanzee deal, Lucy, where they airbrushed her a little bit, made her hands a little bit more human-like, put more white in her eyes and all this kind of stuff. They intentionally was making her more human-like than what she really was. And really, she was just a chimpanzee. But they don't want that to be the case. They want to find this missing link or whatever. Well, the alien thing is the same, okay? So maybe they're not evolutionists, but they want this to be true. And so because of that, you can't really believe, you can't use somebody's eyewitness testimony or whatever, and you can't trust the government on this either because, I mean, they're in on it, right? I mean, not really, but they're in on the whole evolution thing. They're anti-God in their worldview and all of this kind of stuff. And And because I feel like the Bible prohibits this existence of extraterrestrial life, I feel it so strongly that it would literally take an alien walking down to see me. And even then, just to be honest with you, I would still say, hold on a minute, man, what's your name? And I'm going to see if I can find you in the Bible. Because I may be hallucinating. That's the kind of trust that we ought to have, really. There's a peace in resting in the Word of God in that way. And we need to be very, very, very particular and very cautious and very slow to believe anything that doesn't immediately seem to resonate with the Bible. We need to be very demanding about the evidence that we would like to see for these things, rather than be, like the Bible says, tossed to and fro with every wind, which you could say is trend, tossed to and fro with every trend of doctrine. We don't want to be that way. We want to be rooted and grounded in the Word of God, so that we don't, because who knows what may come up in the future, So far it's been evolution and then aliens, and who knows what may come up in the future. Do you have anything else you want to say, Stone?
I think we covered enough for this episode.
Yeah, for this episode. Maybe next episode we'll come back and touch on a few things. I don't know. We appreciate you listening. I hope that you got something out of it. If you would ever like to write in with questions or anything like that, I think give us a few more days and we'll be creating an email address where you can, if there's thoughts that you have for the show or maybe a topic that you've personally struggled with or want to know some answers to, communicate with us. We'd love to hear from you. We'll see you later.